Whoa! Welcome back to the studio, Ryan A.K.A BloodShot Airbrushing, and it's a brand new year. The December beard is gone. No more spiders crawling on the face when you're sleeping. At least that's what it feels like. And the studio, would you look at this? I have seating once again. It's alright, more work is coming, and there's plenty to do around here. There's never a shortage. And the other bonus is, come here. Look who gets to join us once again in the studio. Yeah, Pooch is welcome back in. Now that the parts are off the chairs, and I don't gotta worry about his nose prints all over my freshly painted parts. Yeah. Nah, we love each other. Look up pure panic. Yeah, good boy. But it is time for yet another hack. Airbrushing hacks are my specialty. Believe it, when it comes to saving a buck or two, it's what I do. And you guys may have noticed in some of my other videos when it comes to cutting stencils and cutting templates, shields, whatever you want to call it, I've always been using kind of the photocopy paper and just cutting my stencils out of that. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you can get it done this way, then do it this way. And I do recommend, especially if they're one-time uses, cut it out of the photocopy paper. In my line of work, I don't like to reproduce the same image unless it's for the same client. So every skull I do has got to be hand-drawn. It's got to be different than the last ones I've done. It's got to be an original piece. So that's a big part on why I do 99% of my stencils out of photocopy paper. You can photocopy it to the size you need. It's just super easy, super accessible. And I ain't got that kind of money to have a plotter in the studio. So that's how I get her done. And always, like I said, draw it out first. And then once you have that, you can size it to the size you need. And then you can start cutting your stencils. And that's pretty much how I do, guys. I do have my shields, my favorite shields that I use all the time. This would be my French curve shield. I've got one that's kind of a little bonier, and I use this for any of my skulls. But today, we're not going to be talking about that because Christmas was just around the corner, and I'm sure you have a recycling bin that looks something like that. And speaking of Christmas, here, let me throw you up on the tripod. That's better. And yes, speaking of Christmas, look what the jolly old Saint Nick brought me in my stocking. Yes, Santa was good to me this year. I've been a pretty good boy, if I do say so myself. And there ain't nobody else here but the pup. You'll vouch for me, right? What we have here is the hot chocolate collection. I don't just have one sweet tooth, I got 32 of them. Count your teeth, people, when you're painting skulls. 32 teeth. No more, no less. Well, you can have less. No more. Yes, the hot chocolate collection, which was divine. Optimus Prime. Yep. Hey man, 5 and up. I fit in that age category. Most definitely. Screen protector for a brand new computer screen. And if you're like me and are fortunate enough to have not one, but 2 replacement phones, look what we scored with that deal. And I think by now you're getting the vibe. I think you get the hint as to where we are going with this hack video. Yes, guys, don't throw this stuff away. That stuff can go. This stuff can stay. Gets a little crazy in the studio sometimes. I don't know my own strength. Alright, so don't throw this stuff away. Keep it. And not only are you saving the landfill from some unnecessary plastics, but man, this stuff is like gold in the airbrushing world. You can cut your templates. Look at this. It's already got a circle. You can use that. Why throw that away? I'm going to use that. We got different thicknesses, guys. We got super thick. These ones are really thick. We've got super thin. And all of these can be used for very different purposes. We don't need the instructions. I know how to transform a transformer. I'm not 5 years old. So let's get into some of the uses of this stuff, shall we? I think we'll start with the thicker and we will work our way to the thinnest. So these cards, now I don't know what kind of stock you put it at. I'm going to say 723. These guys are the thick ones. I wouldn't go too crazy into cutting into these because the thicker they are, obviously, the harder they are going to be to cut. Logically. I like to think logically. Grab yourself a cutting board. Grab yourself an Exacto knife with a brand new blade, preferably. And I'm just going to slap this out there. Kind of an airbrushing hack. Maybe, possibly not really, depending on where you are in your airbrushing career. But guys, when it comes to Exacto Blades, you buy these in the 5-pack and you're spending like 10 bucks. You buy them in the 100-pack, and man, you get, I think it's like 25 to 30 bucks for 100. Definitely the way to go. Definitely the way to go. And then you're not worried about your blades. You can go through them as often as you need. So as I was showing you, some of my favorite template slash shields slash stencil, whatever you want to call it, is the French curve. So when working with something like this, the thicker stock, I also recommend you use a dry erase marker because it can be cleaned off of your plastic after you're done drawing out your shapes. But you don't always have to draw on the clear plastic because it's clear. You can simply just take a drawn out piece of paper, put it behind, and cut through the plastic and the paper as you have your shape drawn out. But for today's video, we're going to draw this out right on the plastic. And all a French curve is curves going from big to small and back again. Can you see that? Not at all. Well, I can see it, and I'm going to cut it out real quick so you guys can kind of see what I'm getting at here. Man, you still can't see it. There we go. And like I said, you could draw this right onto your sheet of paper and then trace it out right through your plastic. Now you do have to press down fairly hard to get through this super hard stuff. And this is why I don't necessarily recommend that you try to do anything more than French curves or even straight lines out of the super hard card stock, because this is pretty hard to cut through. Broke a tip. Yeah, and this is why I buy bulk. So there you go. semi-decent, really quickly cut French curve stencil. You don't gotta throw that away. You could keep this too, man. Those curves, the vice versa, are just as important as the inside. So that's one way to use the thicker cardstock, guys, and I'm sure you can use your own imaginations on a few others as well. And now this one was fairly crude, guys. I'm trying to do it quick for the video. I'm going to do a nicer one out of this guy that I'm going to keep for myself. But let's move on to the next inline. And I think we can safely say that that takes care of any French curves. Let's get into that bone stencil that I showed you that I use so often. What I'm going to do is quickly blast in an outline. And maybe you can see some of these are for teeth. Some of these are for jawbones and eyebrows, brow ridges, fingers. But now we can take the stuff that isn't quite as heavy and we can start cutting out. For the purposes of the video, we're going to use a brand new blade. I might go through a couple for this one. But now this stuff is a lot easier to cut through. You can make some of these little tiny bends quite easily, he said, as he's grunting around the corners. And I'm not staying directly on the lines, nor do you have to. I am trying to get this done relatively quick for video's sake. Maybe we'll just fast forward this part. And so there you have it. And I do believe that will be my new bone stencil. As you can see with my old one, it's a little worse for wear. I've got fingers that are falling off. I've actually had parts that have already kind of started separating and decaying, and I just cut it into something smaller. As you can see, this thing has been littered, just layered with paint, front and back. And this is one of the things I wanted to talk about. Moving to this style of stencil, not only can you see through it when you're trying to match it up with an image, but you can clean it afterwards so you don't have to worry about layers and layers of paint buildup. And not only that, but you don't have to worry about this deteriorating and breaking over time. Paper is definitely a lot less durable than this stuff. So that's just a couple examples. I think we're going to move to the thin stuff. And now when you're moving into this kind of stuff, I'm sure you can imagine the possibilities. I have my typical logo that I use, which is just an old business card that I've cut out. And this was nice because it did have some center images that I could use so I can get this thing laid down into the middle of wherever I'm signing. But imagine how much better it would be if I had this thing cut out in plastic that I can see through. I'll always know where my center point is. I can even draft one onto the plastic and you'd see through. So that's just another example of what can be used with this. And I'm sure if you're doing your own skulls, I've got so many to choose from. This gotta work. And we're just gonna stuff them right underneath. And I'm sure you can see how easy it would be to cut them on out and have them indestructible. Well, kinda. And this is gonna lead into my very last point. Check out that guy. And you can get some pretty good detail out of these photocopies, but again, they do fall apart over time. Here's a better shot of some of my skulls that I have cut out of photocopy paper over the years. And you can see some of these guys ain't much bigger than a Canadian loony. Skulls, skulls, skulls. If it wasn't for skulls, I probably wouldn't have a job. And speaking of job, put that back in my pocket. Yes, skulls, skulls, skulls. My God. My God. That pays the bills. Well, now that we got this pile out of the way, clean up this mess. And let me show you the last little hack that I want to bring you today. I've got a little bit of touch-ups to do on this silver for these letters. I got a couple little cut lines that are showing through. So what I need to do is I need to get some silver on top of that. This has been cleared and then wet sanded and ready for me to do any touch-ups. And once the silver is done, then I go in with a red pinstripe and we call that good to go. So, with this thinner stuff, what I'm going to do, what I would usually do, maybe I should bring you there first, is I'd probably have to mask out some of these letters, or at the very least, use multiple shields just so that I can block off the paint from behind so I can get some silver on there and not worry about silver overspray everywhere else. But I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to go a little more specialized with my handy dandy pro stencil material. And just like a pro, not going to waste the entire sheet. I'm just going to cut out what I need. With my handy dry erase marker, I'm going to trace out the letters that need some attention. Because as I had mentioned earlier, the graphic in behind the lettering, well, the lip from that is showing through a few of these letters. So just that area needs to be addressed. And for ease of visibility, I've slapped it onto a piece of paper and now proceed to cut it on out. And this is still obviously a little harder than cutting through photocopy paper, but with a bit of pressure and some fluid movements, I'm getting through just fine. Cut right through the paper on that one, so as you can see, it's not so hard. It's not so hard. And at the very least, it's great practice for blade control. See how good you really are. As we wrap up the remainder of these letters, and I should probably show you, this whole thing was done with that broken tip. That wasn't even a brand new Exacto blade. I'm sure it would have been even easier with a brand new blade. And we're going to clean off that dry erase, line it up as a pro would do, skirt it like a pro, wrong kind of pro there, and spray her on down. Test your paint prior to, just like the pros do. And if you listen carefully, you can hear the air being pushed underneath that stencil, reverberating behind it, causing the song of the stencils. I'm sure the dolphins and whales of the world fully understand. Or is it more like a cat being dragged through a flute? And now let's peel it up and see, do we got overspray over everything? Not even a little bit. And silver, anybody who has ever sprayed silver knows that this stuff flies. And without even knowing it, you can have silver everywhere. Here, right where we wanted it. So there you have it, folks. Tested in the field. BloodShot seal of approval. Take it for what it's worth. And as I said, don't throw this stuff away. You can use it, you can abuse it, and I'll tell you, these are going to come in handy. The pros had to start somewhere, and I'm sure you can use your imagination. If you want to go out and buy the expensive stencils, go right ahead. If you want to save $1, that's how you do. Alright guys, and that's it for that one. I hope you learned a little something. I hope you can take this with you. I hope you can save $1 or $2. And this is just the beginning. Just the beginning. I've got plenty of other ideas and solutions to save you some time. And, dryer sheets? Where'd that come from? That might give you a hint or two. But we're gonna touch that on a later date. This video has gotten a little too long. Out of control. Out of control. But until the next one, guys, and as always, like, follow, subscribe. Thanks for coming along for the ride. Cheers. And if you'd like to get your hands on your own BloodShot uniform, slide on by the Spreadshirt page and snag one up for yourself. And don't forget, guys, we've got more airbrushing hacks, more beginner series, and a few more tutorials to come. Tell the world the BloodShot Army is here to spray.